and until the end of my bachelor I had already published 7 research papers. So
that's impressive, man. Transformers, how would they build and why? That why is DALL-E so bad and at text to image generation?
I don't believe so. Jailbreaking would be when you use certain techniques that more or less get passed through this security. ChatGPT had passed this test. Do you consider this AGI? Someone just starting to just wrote a word 1,000 times, and the person tested many words and it always worked, becoming a competitor of NVIDIA. So right now,
oh my god, yeah.
Like it would really disrupt the market. 30 years ago, what we considered, and I think like 99% of people consider AGI, was something that like ChatGPT can already do.
ChatGPT or OpenAI is now more focused on Sora, building their text to video project. Hi everybody, this is the best podcast I ever had. The reason is Hugo, who is actually working in OpenAI, he shares the journey of ChatGPT. He shares why DALL-E is so bad. We have talked about a lot of things. The most important thing that I believe that you will get from this podcast is, if you are someone who is intrigued with the current technologies, the upcoming technologies, AI, the future of AGI, which is artificial general intelligence, this podcast is a must watch for you guys, because here he explains all those things in very simple words, and most importantly this podcast is quite technical, so you might want to take notes and write down them because it is going to be technical after some point. So if you are someone interested in AI, machine learning, the future of AGI, make sure you watch till the very end and make sure you hit the like button as well. After watching this video, if you found this helpful, make sure to share with at least one person in your community. And most importantly, a lot of people who watch our video do not subscribe us. Make sure you subscribe and press the bell icon, because subscribers is the only instrument that can help us to land much better guests on our podcast. So watch this podcast very carefully, listen to what he says and try to understand the technical terms. Even if you don't know anything about AI, he has explained very properly to you guys, and that is going to be plus point for you guys. So watch this podcast and let me know in the comment section what do you think about that. Hugo, first of all, welcome to our YouTube channel, and it's really great to have you, man. Like literally I was finding people from OpenAI, because you guys are the ones that have contributed in creating of ChatGPT and stuff. So before getting started, I want to ask you clearly, and what is your journey so far, and how have you got into OpenAI, and just share your story, man, your journey.
Yeah, well, I'm originally from Brazil, and I'm back here right now.
Okay.
But for my bachelor, I got a scholarship to study in the Netherlands. So then I moved there to do my studies in finance, so not related to AI. But there in the study, at some point needed to do like a internship, which I did. But I found the job too monotone, like it was too repetitive, the tasks and so on. So I decided that I wanted to do something, like something more complex than simply, for example, back then I was doing risk management, which is quite nice. It's better than, for example, accounts payable or things like that. But still, I found it a bit too repetitive. So I wanted to do I wanted to have like a higher position or a more complex position. So then I saw that to do this, you needed a master's, of course, and and I really liked the quantitative methods, also in finance. But my course didn't have a lot of mathematics in the bachelor. So what I decided to do is just start learning by myself, getting like some certificates on Coursera, which is a website that offers courses. And also when I started contacting the universities about the possibility of doing a master's in quantitative finance or financial engineering, they told me that even though I had those certificates that would show that I know quite well, quite a lot of things in mathematics and so on, it was not enough to prove that I was really able to do this masters. So I got a bit frustrated, and then I decided to simply get something that they really cannot say that is not a proof that I can do advanced quantitative methods. And then I started doing research because I felt like if I have a published paper in a scientific journal, and if the topic is quite quantitative, then it's like it's a big proof, especially because most people only start publishing, and also especially as a first author, and only in their PhD or even after their PhD. So I started doing research. I managed to, so far, until the end of my bachelor. So in the last year of my bachelor that I started doing research. And until the end of my bachelor, I had already published 7 research papers. So I had already enough to prove, so to speak. And they were mainly focused on the use and applications of neural networks on finance. But then I just started liking so much neural networks and machine learning methods that I just decided to do a master's in statistics instead of a master's in quantitative finance or financial engineering, because, first of all, I was really interested in the methods, but secondly, I started to feel like I could use my knowledge in a better way. And of course, it's very nice to use your knowledge to get a nice job and make some money, but at the same time, you could also use your knowledge. For example, right now, I'm working on methods in causal inference, and also making a match between machine learning methods and causal inference to use to create knowledge, and for example, drug discovery, to make sure that a drug really works, or to make sure that a policy really works, or things like that. So to do science in a better way using statistical tools, and especially these novel machine learning tools. So that's why I decided to do a master's in statistics, and that's what I'm currently working on. So it's still related to machine learning, but now more the general framework than the applications of machine learning in finance.
So you are working as a machine learning engineer in OpenAI.
What did you say?
So you're working as a machine learning engineer in OpenAI?
Well, so in OpenAI, I'm working at their red team, which is essentially, I can only share publicly available information, by the way, because I signed an NDA, so I won't be able to talk a lot about it, unfortunately. But what is publicly available and what I can say is that we work to ensure that the models, especially the novel models of OpenAI, are safe. So to make sure that people cannot jailbreak it or cannot make use of it in a bad way. So I'm simply doing research about this and trying to find weaknesses in the models or risks that they didn't think about when they were developing or employing the model. So this is essentially what I do at OpenAI. So not necessarily a machine learning engineer, but more like a safeguard worker, you could say.
Alright, man, that is very interesting, because you are the people who protect OpenAI and ChatGPT from jailbreaking, because there were a couple of news in the recent past as well of jailbreaking and people doing a lot of things with that. So I wanted to ask you very clearly, if let us say I want to become an AI engineer like you with so much knowledge and experience. By the way, what is your age now?
I'm 22 right now.
22?
Yes.
Yeah. So let us say I want to become a machine learning engineer and AI engineer like you, what would be the roadmap or the skills, the technologies that you need to learn, and what are the resources that you also refer to become that engineer, AI engineer?
Well, first of all, you need to learn Python, especially nowadays. The great majority of AI development, especially related to large language models and things like that, is using Python. So this is a must. Mathematics is also important, especially if you want to develop models, or if you really want to understand why they work, then mathematics would be important. So calculus, multivariate or vector calculus. Also linear algebra is very important. You don't need to be like an expert in mathematics, like you don't need to be able to prove theorems and fully appreciate them and so on. But understanding the concepts and so is quite important. And also, well, there are a lot of resources out there. There are some courses on Coursera, some courses on YouTube, and they are super good. Like, it's crazy to see that the amount of content that is out there that is very, very good. And also, I would dare to say even better than most universities offer, because they really go straight to the point of how you can play with the models and try yourself. And this is also something very important. You should not only learn and the concepts and the ideas, but you should also try to apply them and to play with them, because this really helps you to fully understand it. And one thing that really helps in this field is having a good intuition about things. So sure, we have quite some theory about the use of AI and so on, but we also have a lot of things that we still don't know. And sometimes, especially when you're working in the industry, so not necessarily in academia that you need to have a reason and a theory for everything, but sometimes in the industry, they only look at the result. They don't care about the theory that you used or about the explanation why it's working. So sometimes having this intuition of knowing, for example, how to trick a certain hyperparameter, or which model to use based on the data that you're seeing, this can be very important. And sure, you have some theories and knowledge that you can use to help you with this, but I would dare to say that this mainly comes from trying out and just getting some experience of it.
Okay, yeah, that is going to be a fun journey, because people need to implement more than they are actually learning. So actually, what I wanted to ask is, it is a really important question, because the thing is, everybody is now using ChatGPT and everybody knows that, but can you share the entire journey of when did the idea came of creating ChatGPT, which year was that, and through the entire process of who built that, how many people were into that, and the complete journey of building ChatGPT from zero to what it is actually today?
Well, I mean, it depends on the person you ask, of course, because some people would go back to the 80s and 70s when neural networks were developed and so on. But well, I don't have a lot of knowledge about the history of building ChatGPT, to be honest. But I remember that it's quite an old project. You only get like quite some attention with ChatGPT 2, if I remember correctly. I think it was in 2020 when they started to like see quite some potential, and not only they OpenAI but also people from other fields and companies. But of course it took some time to further fine tune it and so on. And well, we cannot forget, of course, the creation of the transformers model, which was like essential to make sure that these large language models will really work. because beforehand.
Okay, so can you explain that transformers? How would they build and why?
Yeah, so for sure. So before we had transformers, because essentially ChatGPT and all large language models, they are trained to predict the next word. And
Okay.
yeah, it's a bit crazy, but by just doing this, we can have quite some good capabilities, especially after scaling it up. But essentially, it's just you give some text and it needs to predict the next word, and this is how it is trained, and also how it works, at least from what we see and know with coding. But beforehand, we for these tasks, we used to use a model called recurrent neural network, and there was even like a sub-model of this type of neural network family, which was called long short-term memory neural network, which essentially would you would give a certain input, and then you would use this input to predict the next input, or actually to predict a part of the next input, and also have it not only this predict, and then for the next cell of the neural network, so to speak, you have also the input coming in, but also the prediction of this input. For example, let's say you are right now at time t, and at time t you are using a certain input, and then a certain neural network will produce a certain output, or prediction we could call, and this output and prediction will also be used for the next neural network, which is also receiving the real input, and you will do this until you really go, or until you really get to your output. So until you are in the final cell, which would receive still the output of the neural network, the preceding neural network, plus the last input that you have to predict the next thing, which could be the word, for example. So you would look at, for example, you have like certain words. So for example, if you say, I will go to the cinema. So when the neural network wants to predict cinema, it would actually start looking at I, and then use I to predict will, and then use will to predict go, and then finally, once you have all the outputs of the neural networks plus the inputs, it would really predict what you are looking for. This used to work quite well, and I mean it still does, especially with time series. But with language, there is an issue, which is essentially that sometimes the prediction of a certain word depends much more in the beginning of the sentence, or even like in a sentence preceding the sentence that you are currently at. And when you do this type of what we call recurrent prediction, that you go from one word to the other one, you start to lose a lot of information from the first word or the first sentence, for example. And so we call this, by the way, gradient vanishing. One way that we found to solve this issue was with the transformers architecture, which is essentially more or less, instead of having like word per word and so on, you create a vector or like a list with all the words, and you create more or less a matrix or like a square with weights of how important those words are in relation to other words. So for example, you have here, I will go to the cinema. For example, I will go to the cinema with my brother. So we have here, and then here you also have, I will go to the cinema with my brother. So the same sentence. Needless to say, at some point you have here the entry my, which is here, and this actually would be here my, and the word I. And these words, they are quite far apart. However, they are very related to each other. And this relatedness, or what we call attention, so how much attention the neural network should pay to like predict the next word, is what made everything change. Because right now you are not doing you're still doing more or less in a recurrent manner, sorry, like in a way that you respect the order, but right now you can allocate weights depending on where you are in the sentence, and this really changed everything. So yeah, this is essentially how transformers work in broader terms.
Okay. So actually, the story of ChatGPT isn't really clear, because it has been started for a while now, and there are a lot of changes into that. So before getting ahead, I wanted to ask you about how do you collect data for training these models?
Yeah, so I'm not in this department, so not
Okay.
only do I not know, but also I don't think they are allowed to share this information. So unfortunately, I cannot answer this question. Yeah.
Yeah, completely understand that, man. So recently, Sam Altman wanted to raise $7 trillion or something like that, and he went to United Arab Emirates and all those people who can provide them some amount of that. So, what do you think is this amount for? Actually, $7 trillion. Like, why? Even the, like, if you see out there, the top countries of the world, for even India or Germany, even Japan, those guys don't even have the GDP of $7 trillion, and like that is literally a crazy number to ask for any company out there. So what is the basic reason behind that, demanding such amount of money for ChatGPT?
Yeah, I mean, right now also talking as like a individual, so not as the worker of OpenAI, because I also don't have this information, even though I work there. But me personally, what I think, and from what I understood of news and the things that I read, is that right now OpenAI and most companies that work with large language models, for example, Google and Meta right now, they are really focusing on scaling the models up, because there is something that we learned, and it was a quite novel theory in statistics, and we learned because of neural networks, which is what we call double descent.
Okay.
So usually for any statistical model, when you start increasing the number of parameters, at some point your error in the prediction starts to decrease. But at some point there is like the optimum where you should stop adding parameters, and afterwards the error starts to increase again because you're starting to overfit. So your model is starting to memorize the data that is being trained upon. However, we discovered that actually at some point, if you continue to add parameters and parameters, at some point this starts to decrease the error, and it continues to increase, and we don't know where it stops, because some people say the ChatGPT 4 has like 1 trillion parameters or a few trillion parameters. I don't think this information is publicly available, and I don't know how many parameters there are, but so far all these companies are simply putting more and more parameters to train the models, so scaling them up and simply getting better results, and they just see that they are continuously having better and better results, so they're continuing to increase the number of parameters. The issue with increasing the number of parameters is that it takes more time to train your model, and the money that some Altman is probably asking for, and many other companies use or ask for, is mainly to buy GPUs to train the models, because the models do require GPU for training. So the more GPUs you have, the more parameters you can add to your model, and the more parameters that you can add to a model, so far at least, the better a model performs. There are some other companies that are trying other approaches. For example, you had Mixtral, which created like a 7 billion parameter model, and they used something that I forgot the technical name right now, but essentially they created a few small large language models but these large language models were specialized in certain fields. So you had one large language model which was specialized in mathematics, and another one was, let's say, I'm making this up by the way, in law. So when you ask a question to this large language model of Mixtral, you will get your question and you will allocate your question to the large language model that is most suitable to answer this question. And this showed to be quite effective. Their model is, by the way, open source, so anyone can download and just play with it and run locally. And it's very powerful. It outperforms ChatGPT 3.5 in many benchmarks. It does not outperform ChatGPT 4, but if you think that we also don't know how many parameters ChatGPT 3.5 has, but probably like more than any case, I would dare to say more than 300 billion parameters. So you're comparing a model with 300 billion parameters against a model with 7 billion parameters, and the model which is much smaller, the 7 billion parameters, is performing better than the 3.5. So these techniques can also help. And once again, talking as a normal person, so not an OpenAI employee, and also just guessing right now, but I would say that OpenAI is both focusing on using and creating these techniques that make the large language model better. So that's why they also need money for research and so on, but also focusing on increasing the number of GPUs that they have to increase the number of parameters and improve their models.
That's impressive, man. Like the more users you will have on the platform, the more people will use your platform, the more you need GPUs and processing power behind that as well. And recently they have also launched Sora, and for Sora as well they will need more and more GPUs. So I wanted to ask a follow-up question with that. There are a lot of companies and new AI tools are coming out, like there is Find AI, we have Perplexity AI and Claude AI. All these tools are there, but what I think personally, and from thing that people are saying out there on internet, is that ChatGPT or OpenAI is now more focused on Sora, building their text to video project. So what do you think about that?
Once again, my answer as an individual, not the work of OpenAI. And also I have a lot of information about it. So many of the things I will say are more my guesses and my intuitions. But I will say that this tool is a tool that we are currently quite lacking. Using text to video. There are some websites and tools that you can use it, but from what I saw from the preview of the Sora model that they published on, I think, YouTube and LinkedIn and other platforms, it seems to be quite better than the other models that we currently have. And it could really have a big impact in things like move creation, marketing activities, and so on. And I would dare to say that they are really focused on this because, first of all, it could be a big economic opportunity there. And secondly, wanting or not, for the model to make sense, the Sora model to create nice videos, it needs to more or less have a representation of the world, and especially the physical world. So taking more or less into account the physical laws that we have that govern the universe. So if the model is producing good videos that respect these laws, it has, even indirectly, but it still has a representation of the world, and it more or less understands the physical laws that we have. So this could also be one way that they can use to achieve AGI, which is their mission. Because well, an AGI model would have a lot of understanding of humanity and our tasks and economic things that we have. But also would also be important for it to understand the natural world, and especially physical laws. And especially if we want one day to use AGI in the physical world So with robots, for example, and things like that. So that's my guess of why OpenAI is right now quite focused on the Sora's development, and also it also adds quite some marketing for them, because sure, every time OpenAI launches a new development of ChatGPT, people like it gets some buzz. People start talking about it, but much less as in the beginning. But once once OpenAI launched Sora, it became a big news. Everybody was talking about it, and everybody was wanting to have access to it, and this probably also increased its popularity. And even with people that were maybe a bit skeptical, or people that tend to work a lot of filming and so on, and not necessarily a lot of words or coding, for example. So this also creates a new market for them as well.
All right. Yeah. This is very business perspective of that. And also, I wanted to ask this very interesting question, and that is, can we get AGI in this year, by the end of this year?
Once again, answering as an individual and an OpenAI employee, I don't believe so. I mean, it really depends on your definition of AGI.
So when can we get
AGI,
that? Until when can we get AGI?
When you're asking?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's very difficult to say. It's really difficult, but I would say that we are a bit too optimistic. Once again, it depends on your definition of AGI. If you consider AGI, like for example, 30 years ago, what we considered, and I think like 99% of people consider AGI, was something that like ChatGPT can already do. So if 30 years ago, or 10 years ago, if you would come to someone and say, hey, there is like a neural network or like a machine learning tool that can code very well, that can pass national exams or even university exams, that can do a lot of stuff, do you consider this AGI? Like, do you think that it is really intelligent? I think almost everybody would say yes. But then over time,
that is interesting perspective, man. Like literally, that is really interesting. Like a lot of people at that time, if you would ask people that what is AGI in your mind, if you describe ChatGPT, then they would definitely most of people would say that, yeah, this is what we want in AGI. Yeah, you can continue.
Yes.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and there was even one test called the Turing test, which I think Alan Turing was the one who developed it, or it was developed after his theories. I'm not 100% sure about it, but what I do know, it was a test to test whether a machine was really intelligent. And if I remember it correctly, once I read that ChatGPT had passed this test, ChatGPT 4. So
impressive.
Probably for Alan Turing, with his knowledge back then, it would be AGI. But talking right now at our current definition of AGI, so what we expect from ChatGPT, which in my definition of AGI would be it being able to do most economic work that we have, and especially for me, because I'm a researcher and I publish papers, so for me it would be very important that the ChatGPT can, for example, create knowledge. So start a research project and perform everything needed in the research project and publish a paper afterwards. If it can do this, then I would consider this as AGI. And in this aspect, I think we're quite far. Why? Because the current approach that we use is once again predicting the next word. So we're not giving the model autonomy to try things, to learn with its mistakes. So is what we call like a supervised or a semi-supervised learning, depending on your definition, of course. But it's not what we call reinforcement learning. approach, where the model just tries out and learns with the environment. And I think that it wouldn't be necessary to make a mix of both, to be able to have like a model that you can say, for example, hey, there is this topic which can be interesting. For example, I don't know, like a new cancer treatment using a new chemical that we discover. Do a research about it and come back to me in like 1 week or 1 month and with a paper. I think to achieve this level, it will take maybe a few years, like maybe 5 years, but also things are going so fast right now that it's very difficult to say whether it will be right or wrong. I know that most experts estimate that we will have AGI before 2030. There's like I forgot the name of the website, but if you look it up later, there is a website where they post the surveys that they make with experts in the machine learning field, asking certain questions, and from which one would be when AGI will be present. And if I remember correctly, right now, like the great majority of people, like maybe more than 85% of experts believe that will be before 2030.
Impressive, like that is very interesting. Like 2030 will be the year we can consider it for now. And before getting started, in this video I wanted to ask this very interesting question, and that is about jailbreaking. Now, first of all, in your words, explain jailbreaking to people out there who don't know about that. And secondly, the question that I want to ask with that follow-up question, and that is about jailbreaking, because recently there was one of the guests on my podcast, and he said that jailbreaking has been done with a lot of LLM models. There was a simple ASCII code that was run through them, and even the models like Mixtral AI and Llama and even ChatGPT, those have failed with that jailbreaking thing because of simple ASCII code that the one person put out there. So what do you think about jailbreaking? Explain it to the people out there who don't know about jailbreaking. And also secondly, tell us about at what level your security is there at OpenAI that it can decrease the threat of jailbreaking.
Well, so the first question is explaining jailbreaking, right? If I understood correctly.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay. So jailbreaking is essentially, so when you open ChatGPT in your browser, you can ask it questions, and if you try to ask certain questions or tasks that it considers bad, then you will refuse to give you an answer, even though theoretically, in theory, it can give you the answer. So, for example, if you go right now to ChatGPT and ask it to create, I don't know, to give you the recipe to create a chemical weapon, like an easy chemical weapon that it can build at home, in theory,
Yes.
it will refuse to do this. And this is not because the model knows that it shouldn't do it. It is actually something human-made, more or less. We added to the model to avoid doing this. Jailbreaking would be when you use certain techniques that more or less get passed through this security, security standard, so to speak. And there, well, just to give an example, which is also publicly available, and it happened, I think, last year. Someone just started to just wrote a word 1,000 times, and the person tested many words, and it always worked. And ChatGPT would simply started to answer the prompt with data that it had been trained upon. And this person managed to then get some emails, like personal emails, from OpenAI or even other things that it was in the data set.
That's scary, man.
Needless to say, OpenAI solved this issue, but this is only one example. So jailbreak sometimes and many times is like sometimes it's just try something random, or like something like that, like a very strange text, and you manage to jailbreak. And you can imagine there are people out there who like create a program that tries every day 1,000 or even 1,000,000 prompts trying to jailbreak OpenAI models, for example ChatGPT, and sometimes it manages to do so. And once you jailbreak the model, you can ask these questions that we consider forbidden.
Yes.
For example, even like asking ChatGPT to write a Python code to infect someone's computer, so to hack someone's computer. Well, and once again, I'm talking as a personal, like an individual, and not like a OpenAI employee. In my opinion, it is important that companies take care about this, but at the same time, it's also good that companies or researchers create large language models that are open sourced, because this allows many people to use the model in their daily activities, to fine-tune the model and make it even better. But one issue with open sourcing your model is that people can take your model and take away the jailbreaks. So you have what we call nowadays the uncensored large language models, and if you know some coding, or if you know like a bit about technology, you can easily get access to them. And you have even nowadays large language models that are specialized in hacking stuff.
Yes.
So even though I think it's important that companies try to focus on jailbreak and so on, I also believe that like you can try everything you want. People would always have the possibility to use these uncensored large language models. But yeah, preferably as OpenAI or Meta or Google, you would prefer that the people don't use your model for this, because then you can first of all, you get a bad image, and secondly, I don't know about the current law, but I would imagine that this could also even have some negative legal aspects for your company. So yeah. But okay. Now coming back to your second question, which was actually I forgot. What was the second question?
Yeah, so I was asking how you guys are reducing that threat.
Yeah, so once again, talking as an individual and not an OpenAI employee, because in theory I cannot share this information. But from what I know from out there, and you can look it up later, you're gonna see this public available. The way that the people usually try to solve this issue is by try and error, or by other people reporting this. So if you use ChatGPT and there is something bad or you want to give feedback, you can also report the conversation. And also at times ChatGPT and other companies, OpenAI and other companies, they have a look at your chats with the model. Not all companies, but I would say the great majority has access to your chats with the bot. So and usually they use filter words to try to get, for example, chats where there was, I don't know, the word, for example, chemical weapon or biological weapon was used. Yes, and then they analyze it, and then they simply learn from the mistakes. So they see hey, this person used this jailbreak, now we're gonna solve it. So it's very similar to how companies deal with hackers. So usually you have for example, a certain program, for example, the latest version of the iOS software that people have in their software system that people have in their iPhones. It needs to get updated quite regularly. Sometimes it's to improve features, but there are a lot of times that is simply because in the code someone found a breach in the code which they can use and hack the system, so a certain hacker, and then the company is simply updating the code to make sure that this part of the code from their system which was weak becomes strong and it does not allow for the hacker to make use of this. So I think it would be like this for upcoming years or even forever, that you will be like the same thing with hackers and cybersecurity, and we're gonna have also the jailbreakers and the safety guards of large language models, that they will always be in a competition, and one will always move the other to go a step further and try new things and so on.
So currently it is a trial and error process, and in future even they can automate this type of things that people are trying to report, and they'll automatically have that reports cleared with their automations. So moving on to the next question, I wanted to ask about the text to image AI of your OpenAI service, that is DALL-E. And DALL-2 is I think your service of image to text to image, but as compared to Mid Journey and CArt and like other types of text to image things, stable diffusion, there is stable diffusion and all those things, DALL-E is not the first priority of people. Like even if someone wants to create text to image, they will not go to DALL-E for creating that high quality image with a lot of specifications. So if they want a best image for their project with lot of personalizations, they will go to Mid Journey, they will go to stable diffusion. And I wanted to ask this question, that why is DALL-E so bad and at text to image generation? Like that is the question that I wanted to ask.
Well, I think once again, I also, even if I can share any information that I have from OpenAI from my work, but even if I could, I don't know because it's not in my department. But me as a personal individual and guessing, I would say that what happens with many companies is that sometimes they come late to a certain field. So in this case, OpenAI was a bit late when it was text to image, and then they tried the DALL-E model, but without investing heavily in this because they have limited resources. So their first model was sucked a bit, but they were hoping that many more people would use the model, and then they would improve over time. And they were hoping that people would be the first users just because they already know ChatGPT. So they thought like, okay, maybe this will work out. But probably what happened is that the return in the investment was quite poor, and then they didn't give up yet. But I think they simply decided to not invest super heavily in this model and invest more heavily in ChatGPT and, for example, Sora. And another thing that is important to mention and to remember is that OpenAI's main goal is to create AGI. And I believe, and I think OpenAI also believes, that text to image does not add a lot in the creation of AGI. Once again, text to video does add, as I explained, that you need to understand the physical laws and so on to create a video that makes sense. But with image, this is not necessarily the case. So that is my guess of why DALL-E is quite behind the competition. But I think they will continue to maintain DALL-E. Like, for example, Google maintains Google Sheets. So I think nobody doubts that Excel is better than Google Sheets. But it is important that Google maintains Google Sheets because some people want to use it. And also, if one day something happens, for example, Excel starts to be quite bad, then I think, or it starts to have some bugs and people are starting to complain, then I think that Google can easily invest quite heavily in Google Sheets and make it the top product. So maybe OpenAI has also this strategy. But once again, this is just my personal guessing.
No, that is really interesting perspective to look at that, because a lot of people think that DALL-E is just another failed application of OpenAI. But as you said, their actual goal is to develop AGI, so it doesn't really contribute a lot to achieve that personal or their main goal towards their journey. Yeah, so this is what is a total different perspective that I got from you. And also in this AI gold rush, a lot of people are creating AI applications, and they are just crazy about developing more and more AI applications. So what, like, even me as personally, I'm also creating AI applications. So we are also developing a lot of things with AI. It will be soon out for public, but the thing is, a lot of people are doing that. And in that, this entire race of generating AI applications, what are the shovels, or what you can say, the underlined things that every AI startup will require? Doesn't matter which AI startup it is, but they will require these types of things to, in order to scale, in order to run their AI applications. And what are those things that are really important for AI applications, that people can literally switch from not building AI applications but building the things that support AI applications?
Okay, so your question is, what are the key things that such startup should have to succeed, right? If I understand correctly.
No, I'm asking that what are the the things that support AI applications to work, because people can focus on the things which are underlining those AI startups, like AI
Okay.
applications. Yeah.
Okay, so I understand now. Yeah, I mean, one thing that would be
Yeah.
very, very nice, it would take quite some time, but it would be
Okay.
like, if someone managed to do this, it would be like crazy. Like, it would really disrupt the market, and it would be like a highly valued
Okay.
company. Is becoming a competitor of NVIDIA. So right now,
Oh my god, yeah.
to train large language models or mini AI things, we use GPUs because it's faster than CPUs, and NVIDIA has a monopoly there, because when you use Python, the only way to access GPU is through CUDA, the CUDA package, and CUDA is based upon NVIDIA GPUs. And actually, if I remember correctly, CUDA was created by NVIDIA. So right now, like, there's no competition. Of course, NVIDIA is not asking like a price that is too high, because I think they found their optimal price regarding how much profit and demand they can achieve. But if someone is able to like find a replacement or create a replacement for CUDA to access other GPUs,
Okay.
or even access their own GPU and provide a GPU that is cheaper, or like is better in an economic point of view than NVIDIA's GPU, this would be like a game changer, I would dare to say. And it's something that is like, I would say, is like so obvious that is there in the market, that this opportunity is there, and we should make sure that it happens, because having a monopoly is never good. So it's always good that we have competition to try things better and so on. But at the same time, and I'm no expert there, but I think it's also quite difficult. Actually, it must be quite difficult because nobody has done it yet. But if someone would be able, or a startup would be able to do this, yeah, it would really be crazy. But not only GPU stuff like what I just said, but also other things that help and that are needed for AI applications, so on, is also, for example, cooling systems for the GPUs. And these are things that are usually important. And also something that we might not think of straight ahead, but is important, is clean energy production and distribution, because those models use quite some energy, and they help us a lot, of course.
Yes.
But it's not good to use non-renewable energy for them, because of climate change and all those things, of course. So if you also are able to provide a lot of energy for them, then people will be able to use them in a cheaper way, usually, because the more energy you have, the cheaper the energy is. But also, without this fear of like using too much energy and so on, because if it is renewable, usually, it works better, of course, and it is in a sustainable way. So yeah, these are my two.
Yeah, so first is GPUs and second is green energy and power.
Yes, and also cooling systems could also be cooling systems for GPUs.
Yes, yeah. That's one really interesting thing, because I also heard that even for training ChatGPT, there was something around 2.5 billion gallons of water. I don't exactly know the number, but that was a huge number that was required for the cooling things, and that is a huge number, you know.